Hello, this is George Quintana with Cuban Connections, who along with Gallatin Valley Friends of Cuba is bringing you this video today. I'm with Carlos Lazo, and for those of you who don't know, Carlos and his two sons and two nephews just completed a cycling trip from Seattle to Washington, D.C. They were bicycling to build Puentes de Amor, or Bridges of Love, between the people of Cuba and the people of the United States, and to call for an end to the embargo. Carlos, welcome. Introduce yourself to the people watching at home.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Jorge. I'm a Cuban American. I have been living in the United States half of my life for 29 years, and I live half of my life in Cuba. I am a veteran of the US Army of the Iraq War, and currently a teacher in Seattle, in Washington. And I have, if I have to say something that define me, or that I think that define me, is that I feel a profound love for my country of origin, Cuba, and for my adoptive country, the United States.
The living, you almost seem to live in two worlds. That's a very experience many immigrants and children of immigrants have to deal with. I salute you in your ability to do that so well. And you're, like I said, a bit humble. You also received the Bronze Star in Iraq.
Yeah.
You know, no need to be so humble all the time.
Okay.
But with that, what made you decide to do this trip across the United States?
Well, first of all, I said that I have a profound love for Cuba and a profound love for the United States. And sometimes Cuba and the United States for me is like my mother and my father. And between those two love and my parents, in this case, these two countries have been divorced for the last 60 years. And for children of divorced parents who doesn't get along very good, they suffer. And in this case, I think that the Cuban Americans, people who live in this country and who also have a profound love for Cuba, they suffer of the type of relationship that the two countries have had for the last 60 years. Uh, what made me to do this trip? Well, around 3 months ago, because the situation of the pandemic, the coronavirus, and the situation that was worsening economic situation in Cuba, I basically uh, thought that it was a good time for the United States to lift at least some economic sanctions against Cuba. Especially, I was encouraged because I read that President Donald Trump offer North Korea help and says that the United States will help North Korea in any way, and that political considerations should take a back seat and human consideration should go first. And the first thing that I thought about when I heard that is that Cuba could be also the case. And we organized a petition in Change that, or to ask President Donald Trump to at least temporarily lift some sanctions, economic sanctions, because of coronavirus. And our petition got very fast, like 20,000 signatures, mostly from Cuban Americans. And we sent the petition to the White House and they never answered. We sent it one more time and they never answered. But what it was worse, the United States basically tighten the sanctions against Cuba. Instead of losing some sanctions, they start basically putting more restrictions. They cut down on the trips to the province of Cuba. They put more restrictions on remittances. They basically were trying to stop Cuba from acquiring oil from other countries. And and that made me think about what we could do to call the attention of the American people, to educate the American people about how this sanctions were basically so bad for the Cuban people, were hurting basically the Cuban people. And that's when the idea came to our minds in my family, and we decided to do it. And we decided to go across the United States. And we thought that it was a good way to call the attention of the people to go from community to community, talking to the Americans, regular people, about how unhumane and how uh, bad were these sanctions for Cuba and for the United States. And I just want to make a point here. When I say for the United States and for the people of the United States, I want to tell you that Cuba, for instance, has a lot of advances in medical treatment for coronavirus. Cuba right now is one of the countries with the lowest rates of mortality, who have been able to control the epidemic surge, basically, and everybody, including the United States, could learn from Cuba and could benefit of the benefits of the Cuban medical doctors. And by having this separation, this embargo, we are not just preventing Cuba from acquiring resources, but also we are preventing Americans from benefiting from the advances of other countries. Yeah.
Indeed. My cousin in Santiago calls me pretty often, and I told him the other day, I said, you know, I'm more worried about my brother in Florida than I am about you in Santiago, and I can't believe it's come to that. But um, let me ask you, you said you wanted to meet with communities along the way. What did you think of Montana?
Well, Montana was, I mean, one of the best places that we visit, because for many reasons. Because the way that we were received there by the people, and you are from Montana, you welcome us there, and I don't have words to express how grateful we are for because you are from Montana, but you also are from Cuba, and then you are this son of the country, like me, like many of us who have a house in Montana, but also has a house in Santiago de Cuba. And your heart is in Montana, but also with the Cuban people. And Montana, also, we were received by elect officials from the state legislature. It was really great. And I mean, like, we talked to many people in the just regular Americans in different places. We went to the city of Helena, and we were received by the mayor of Helena, who is also an immigrant. And I mean, I wish all the trip in general was pretty good. It was over our expectations. But if I have to wish uh, one way that the trip had gone completely, I will say that it would be the time that we spent in Montana.
It's a special place. I must admit that, thank you for the kind words, first of all, but I must admit, when you first told me about this trip, my first thought was, wait, you're going to ride your bicycle over McDonald Pass? Like, to me, that seemed like the hardest part of the trip. But the mountains weren't too much for you guys?
Yeah, but also, and this is something besides the trip, my sons and my nephews, they fall in love with the state. I mean, like, they constantly were like, oh, the state that I like more was Montana.
Well,
One of my sons was like, I will move to Montana. I will move, and I say, hey, Carlos, shut up. You live in Seattle. And when we came back, the same. The conversation was, I have to say something like, hey, guys, we talked about this already, okay? I'm going to get jealous about Seattle, okay? Because they were just talking about Montana, the people, and it's really a beautiful state. It's something, I never have been there. I know many states in the United States that have been here for almost 30 years, but I never have visited Montana, and it really something unique. I
yeah,
mean,
you're all welcome to come back anytime you want.
last night I was watching a program, something in TV, and suddenly I catch a sight of Montana, and I said to my wife, "What is this program going on?" And she said, "I don't know. Let me see." It was in Montana, and Montana is there. I'm sure that I'm gonna visit Montana
Well, you're
sooner
looking forward
than
to it.
later.
let me ask you, I see the portrait of Jose Marti, and also on your trip when I visited the motorhome, you had a book by Jose Marti. Tell me about your relationship with Jose Marti and what he means to you.
Well, Jose Marti for many Cubans and for Cuban Americans is that person that is almost like the soul of the Cuban people. He lived actually like us many years in the United States. He was here and he was fighting for independence for Cuba. But he was also an intellectual with a profound love for humanity, for people, and he have this characteristic that is not it was not just a revolutionary fighting for independence, but also a person who knew profoundly the human soul. And for me, reading Marti when I was a child was he also has stories for kids. And then I thought that it was growing up. Always, I have a thought of Marti because Marti can be useful for many ideas, for many moments in your life. When I was in prison in Cuba, I was for 1 year in prison, and I always have Marti next to me because Marti also was in prison, and I always read his uh, uh, anything writings that he had usually give you a lot of hope, a lot of strength, a lot of thoughts about how to face situations in life. In this case, I thought that it was a good idea to take Marti with me to read in the times when I was not biking. And it was interesting too because during the nights, I end up reading to my kids Jose Marti. The
Mm.
trip was not just about biking and about getting stronger physically, but also about getting stronger mentally. And Jose Marti have that characteristic. One of the kids says something about one word called bicoca, and I said, "Where you got that word? I don't remember." And I said, "Well, that word is in one of the tales of Jose Marti called Meñique." Yeah, I don't remember. And then I got the book. I opened the book and I start reading for the kids the book, and every night we have some kind of discussion about Jose Marti, about some readings, and it was really, and that's what Marti is for many Cubans and for many Cuban Americans. The type of figure that every Cuban can embrace, no matter what their political preference are, no matter where they are politically. Every Cuban, basically, most la majority. I don't know a Cuban who doesn't like Jose Marti.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I know you bring groups of students to Cuba, and I try to organize a few trips from Montana too. And people always ask me, "Well, I'm going to Cuba. What should I read?" And I always say Jose Marti.
Jose Marti.
You know, he is still alive in Cuba. I always feel like if you can quote Jose Marti to another Cuban, you're going to win the argument. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Besides that, Jorge, before I forget, even in Minnesota, when we were in Minneapolis, I learned, I was looking for places where we can find Jose Marti statue or bust, and I learned that there was a bust of Jose Marti, like the figure, the top figure, in the city of Minnesota, in one of the buildings. And I said, I cannot leave this place without visiting Jose Marti. He should be very like lonely there without the visiting of some Cubans. And I just went there with one of my sons, and we were very lucky because we were allowed to enter the town hall and go to the place where he was, and we basically were there. Yeah.
excellent, excellent. Let me ask you, you're right that every Cuban American, no matter if they're right or left or, they claim Jose Marti. What would you say to the people, Americans and Cuban Americans, who differ in their views and oppose loosening the embargo on Cuba? What would you say to them, especially in hindsight of your trip across the United States?
Well, first of all, I think that, and this is my opinion, I think that the embargo this type of economical pressure against the people of Cuba have been there for 60 years. A little bit harder, a little bit losing, but it has been there for 60 years and it never worked. And when things are getting worse, the country have been basically closing up more and more. When things are a little bit more flexible, like when the time of Obama, during the last 2 years of the Obama administration, that there was some relaxation in the embargo and some visits, then economic and situation in Cuba improved for many Cubans. And even the some kind of freedoms that we never saw before in Cuba, Cubans were able to travel outside of the country. Cubans were able to create business. And basically, when the embargo is there and it's harder, no change is coming from Cuba. When the situation change and when there is a change between the two countries, basically situation improve for Cubans. I think that the best ambassadors of democracy are ourselves when we visit Cuba. Even if this argument doesn't work and some people say, well, still I'm for the embargo, I have at least the good feeling that whatever we are doing right now is going to benefit everyone, including those who oppose. Because if we are able to restore the flights to different Cuban provinces, I mean, flight from Miami to Santiago de Cuba, that's going to benefit those who are against or who are for. That's going to benefit Cuban families in both sides of the Florida Strait. It doesn't matter what political side they are. When we fight for, or when we try to fight for not basically telling the United States, do not stop the flow of oil to Cuba, that oil light the Cuban houses, that oil light the Cuban hospitals, and that oil light and move the ambulance, and that benefits all Cubans, or at least our families in the island. When we want to lift the restrictions of Western Union in Europe, for instance, right now, if you live in Europe and you want to send money to Cuba, you cannot use the service of Western Union to send money to your family. If we are able to change that, that's gonna benefit the Cubans who live abroad and the Cubans who live in the island, the families. Then that's what I can say.
No, I appreciate that insight. The idea that U.S. citizens can be the ambassadors for change and democracy, I think, is a very strong argument. I know that many people were following you online as you and your sons and nephews bicycled across. What was that like? Every day it seemed there were more clips of people uploading videos of themselves riding bicycles in spirit with you. How did that make you guys feel?
Jorge, that was very surprising. Okay, I mean, when we initiate this trip and this journey, we have some friends like you, people who support us. I mean, people who basically are for a different approach to the Cuban policies of the United States. But we never thought that through social media, hundreds of people around the world will join us, and hundreds of people from even from Cuba, from France, from Miami. I never imagined that people from Miami, because Miami is a different environment, and I start receiving emails. I still have many that I am trying to prepare some kind of little video to put everything there, because we receive the support of people in Guantanamo, in Miami, in Hialeah, in Paris, in London, in Spain. It's something overwhelming, really overwhelming. Children, women, men. It was something really unique. I mean, like something, and it was not about political positions. It was about building bridges of love. I see that this idea of connecting our two countries, of bringing together our two countries, or sitting down our two countries for them to have a conversation, to talk in a civilized way, is appealing to everyone. And also the idea of that sanctions should be lifted, at least relief during times of coronavirus, is appealing to many people, even people who are very conservative. I have friends who are Trump supporters who actually contribute to our campaign for our GoFundMe campaign, and send me a message, Carlos, and for lifting the embargo just for the coronavirus. But that's okay. I mean, like, this is not about politics. It's about humanity, and and that's what our trip was about. And I feel very humble but very proud at the same time of
Yeah.
what we accomplished. Yeah,
As Jose Marti said, homeland is humanity. Or,
yeah.
yeah, homeland is humanity.
Patria humanidad.
Right, right. So let me ask you, for people who wanna help and support you in your cause here, what can they do? Can they follow you on social media? How can they help you?
Well, basically, they can follow us in social media in Carlos Lazo, and we have a Facebook page. We also still has open the GoFundMe Bridges of Love, Puentes de Amor, and still people can contribute there for our trip. I mean, like, this trip was really we had a lot of expenses when we organized a trip. We bought RV, bikes, everything, and we were thinking about not asking for help, but at the end it was impossible for us economically to do it without the help of the community, and the community have been very supportive and very helpful. But still, if somebody want to help us, they can do a little contribution to the GoFundMe page.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'll post a link to that GoFundMe in our comments section here. Let me ask you, as we're winding this down, what would you tell the people in Cuba about your trip, about your time in the United States, about the future, about anything? What would you tell the people of Cuba?
Well, what I tell the people of Cuba, I I tell the people of Cuba basically the same thing that I tell the people of Cuba when I visit with my students. Uh, Anytime that I talk to my neighbors, to my friends, I always tell them about the need of creating friendship between our two countries. I know that there is a lot of history, and sometimes there are things that happened in the past that where people were hurt in both sides, right? But and I understand that. But if we want to build good relationship between our two countries, we have to, yes, recognize the past, but put our eyes in the future. And the future, in order to build those relationships, have to be a future of love and friendship and understanding and conversations. And that's what I would tell the people of Cuba, the people in positions of power, basically, to be open to that love and friendship in order to bring our two countries together. Yeah.
I often hear a phrase in Cuba: "Our disputes is between our governments, not between our peoples." I
Yeah.
hope it stays.
And that's basically true. When you go to Cuba, Americans go to Cuba, even for parents of the students who I take to Cuba, I also take parents, and they are like surprised that the Cubans doesn't have any animosity against them personally.
No.
They always, I mean, feel like family, friends, and they know that the problems are between the lack of understanding between the governments. Yeah, and that's something good.
All right, Carlos. So as always, fascinating and impressive. Is there anything else you'd like to mention?
Well, we have the trip. We went through many states. We talked to many people, and I think that one of the most important things that this trip had, at least for me, is that at least in the Cuban community outside, inside, in the social media, right now there is a feeling that there is a lot of hate, that people want to fight against each other. But this trip showed me that there is a huge amount, huge mass of Cuban Americans who basically are for love, for good relationships. I received thousands of messages. My page in Facebook was visited like more than 2 million times for people basically from Cuban Americans, also people from Cuba, but many Cubans Americans. Most of the people supporting the GoFundMe page were Cuban Americans. And this shows me that even when hate is very noisy, love is quiet, but we are more those who love. And that gives me a lot of hope. And I know, let me tell you, Jorge, I know that the moment of the relationship, of the embracing the two countries in a respectful relationship is there, is very close. I can see that moment there. It's not that I wish that that moment happened. That moment is going to happen sooner than later. It's just a matter of seeing that moment, that fiesta is happening, and we are going to be there to celebrate together. I promise.
Excellent. I'll bring the rum and cigars for that day.
Okay, está bien.
All right. With that, Carlos, thank you, and thank everyone for tuning in, and pay attention, because I'm sure Carlos's next adventure will also be a great one. Thank you again, Carlos, and thank you for tuning in.
Okay,
Adelante.
un abrazo.